Life has a particular way of being ironic. I made a vlog on Monday where I talked about that I wasn't going to upgrade my camera, that my Canon 70D, which I picked up secondhand, had been a real workhorse for me, and I've done a number of videos recently on color grading and, audio setups, and clearly I started this YouTube channel because of my great love of PC building and technology, but actually the process of making the videos has absolutely captured my imagination. So what became very apparent to me was that I had, albeit a 4-year-old camera, something that was very versatile, that I was learning an awful lot from, and probably had an awful lot more that I could still learn from it. I clearly had not done all of the things that I could do with it. I had not been through all of the settings. I hadn't put custom picture profiles and stuff like that on there. Started looking at the Technicolor files that you can download, etc. It's not my first DSLR. That was my Canon 600D, which is also a really, really fab entry-level camera. I'm not sure that you can still pick this up. I put something called Magic Lantern on this about 2 years ago. Now, Magic Lantern is open source software that's made by a whole bunch of developers collaboratively around the world, and it gives you a whole heap of features that you normally wouldn't find on cameras that aren't costing you somewhere in the region of £3,500–4,000. And those features are things like focus peaking, so that you can manually adjust your lens quickly, and you can quickly spot what's in focus and what's in not. It also gives you things like exposure zebras. So I've talked in one of my previous videos about when you do exposures, the Canon exposure bar on the bottom of your screen tends to average out, it does average out the whole frame. So if you've got an area that's particularly dark and an area that's particularly bright, it's going to average those two things out, and it's going to tell you that that frame is properly exposed. And when you want to do more creative things, where you might have a product that you want lit in the forefront and a very dark background, getting the exposure right, you absolutely would not be able to be completely reliant on that exposure bar to do that. So using zebras to understand which bit of your frame is over and underexposed is a really, really, really helpful feature to have. The other feature that I really enjoy in Magic Lantern is effectively being able to put a ghost image on the screen. So if you want to do some clever stuff, like you've leapt in the air in one pair of clothes and you land in another, or you've moved all of your setup around and you need to get it back in exactly the same spot to do a retake or complete a shot, it's quite a helpful feature to have. So, my 600D, for what was I think £450 camera, brand new, suddenly became, a really, really dynamic workhorse for me. So, as I've been getting into, I guess, more interesting, slightly more advanced techniques with the camera, it seemed like a good idea to put Magic Lantern on my 70D. Now, my health warning, you're going to get the theme of the story here. This has messed my camera up badly. I do not blame the developers of Magic Lantern in any way. This is entirely my own fault. When I put Magic Lantern on my 600D, it was a finalized drop of code. It absolutely had been tested and fed back on and was robust and understood to work. When I downloaded Magic Lantern for my 70D, it was advertised as an alpha set of code. That's not a beta. It's alpha, it's pre-beta, it's expected to be buggy. So I knew what I was getting myself into when I did this eyes open. I knew it could cause me some issues with my camera. The actual comment on the website said, do this at your own risk. If it breaks, you need to pick up the pieces. So I actually got it working initially. It's not a case of that the camera was bricked. It's not a case of I flashed the BIOS and the camera never came back on. I absolutely managed to upgrade to the latest Canon software. Magic Lantern will only work with firmware version 1.1.2, and I managed to get the Magic Lantern files downloaded, put onto the SD card at the root level of the SD card, slapped into the camera, and flashed the firmware again, installed Magic Lantern, absolutely fine, brought the camera up, hit the waste paper bin key on the back of the camera, straight into Magic Lantern, managed to enable the overlay, so had had all of the extra information that Magic Lantern will give you, managed to play around with the ISO settings, so it gives you a much granular set of ISO settings. I got zebras working, both for under and over exposure, so started to have a little play around with this. Had my 600D mounted behind it, capturing all of the stuff, because the video that I'm uploading today was intended to be that a video all about how to use Magic Lantern. I also managed to get focus peaking working, so that you get a nice magenta outline on the items that are in focus on your video, and got onto the ghost function. And as I started to play around with that ghost function, the camera crashed, which is really unusual. I don't think I've ever seen a Canon camera crash before. Switched the camera off, screen stayed on, which seemed unusual. Popped the battery out, camera went off, great. Pop the battery back in, dead. Normally when you put the battery into the camera, a little red light on the side blinks on and off. And indeed that light blinks on and off when you put the SD card in there as well. Absolutely nothing. Left the camera for a couple of days. No joy, absolutely dead. I thought if I left the battery out for a couple of days, it might clear some kind of CMOS chip or something like that. I've got a feeling the ROM that the firmware sits on doesn't require power to keep the information, so that absolutely did not work. So frustrating. I bought that camera secondhand. It was about £400. It's been an absolute workhorse for me. So I then started to debate on what I would do to film this video. I very seriously considered getting the 600D out. It's a great camera. It's a bit of a pain to do focusing on your face because it doesn't have that great autofocus feature that you've got in the 70D. I have got an intervalometer though, so that I can sit in the spot that I'm going to be in and I can half press the shutter button and get it to focus on my face. But what I thought I would do is have a little experiment with my iPhone 7 Plus. Now, the main reason I don't use my iPhone to take videos is the stock app that you get with the phone won't let you control shutter rate, and it won't let you control your ISO. Now, clearly you've got a fixed aperture size, the size of the lens, because you don't have interchangeable lenses. But typically you want the shutter rate of your camera to be twice the speed of your frame rate. So if you're filming at 30 frames per second, which indeed we are now, you want a frame rate of 1/60th of a second. And the app, the stock app out of the box doesn't let you do that. It will vary the frame rate and it will dial the ISO up and down to get the right exposure for you. So I went searching around and I came across a great little app that's called the Filmic Pro. I paid $14.99 for this on the App Store, and it's fab. It lets you control those things, set the shutter rate, set your ISO exactly where you want it, and the great irony of this is it gives you focus peaking and it gives you exposure zebras, which were exactly the things that I was after on my Canon 70D. Now, the major drawback of your camera phone is it has a very, 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 very small sensor in it. The smaller the camera sensor, the less sensitive it is going to be to light. So, I've got two great soft boxes here. It would not surprise me at all if there is grain in this video. It's got a fantastic resolution, but, I think I'd actually prefer a camera doing 1080p full HD with a good sensor and a good color reproduction and sensitivity to light levels than a grainy 4K video. And indeed, when I've used my my new Logitech 4K webcam, which is a great webcam by the way, it's a pretty reasonable picture quality, but whenever I look at that, when I play those videos back before I upload them on YouTube, I always think that the videos that I was getting with my 70D were better quality. So that's what's put me off. So I'd be really, really interested to know what you think of this Image quality, leave your thoughts please down in the comments. Should I go to the 600D while I work out what I'm going to do with my camera, or should I stick with the iPhone 7 Plus uploading on a 4K resolution? So I rang around a couple of camera shops to get some quotations for getting the 70D repaired. Got a long, great lecture from one chap about how I shouldn't have put Magic Lantern on there. Yes, okay, fine, I know that. We are where we are, so I need some help sorting it out. Got some absolutely horrendous quotes around the £400 mark, which clearly was never going to fly because that's indeed what I paid for the camera secondhand to begin with. So I went to Canon themselves. That wouldn't have naturally been the first thought that crept into my brain. And I have to say, you know, I've been critical on this channel before of customer service, DJI. Customer service is absolutely horrendous. When I had a small bit of plastic break off the landing assembly of my drone, you know, they wanted to charge more money just to take the drone in and look at it than actually buying a whole new landing assembly would have cost. You can see my video on repairing my drone by pressing that button there. Not a huge advocate of repairing drones. You know, these can be potentially dangerous bits of kit. A small bit of pop-out plastic probably feels okay. But I'm delighted to say that the customer service at Canon was absolutely fantastic. They charge a flat rate fee to take the camera in. They will conduct whatever repair is required. They will do a cleanup and recondition of the body and the lens of the camera. And that's all for 156 quid. That actually includes the postage back to you as well. That's absolutely fantastic. So I can't rate Canon customer service more highly. It was made resoundingly clear to them that I put Magic Lantern on there. They indicated that it was likely that we would probably need a new main board, which is indeed what I found when I did some research on the internet. But it's a really refreshing change, you know, to have the manufacturer of the product give such great customer service. So there we go, guys. If you've got a Canon camera and you've got a problem with it, go back to Canon before you go to your local camera shop. So it's a slightly weird video, guys. It's a kind of half vloggy, kind of half tech review of the Filmic Pro app, which is a great app, by the way. Do check it out. And I guess this wraps up this video. So if you enjoyed this video, then please smash that thumbs up button. If you're not already subscribed, please do so by bashing the button down there so that you don't miss all of the great content to come. I hope you're really well wherever in the world you are. And I'll see you, hopefully when my 70D is repaired, and in my next video.